Hi, welcome to this screencast. So in this screencast, what I'm going to show is how to use uh, Angular, Ionic, and Cordova to create a hybrid application. So before I do that, uh, let me first describe to you the application that we're going to create. So WordPress has got this thing called Freshly Pressed. Freshly Pressed is a daily list of blocks that are selected by the editor and highlighted in this freshly pressed uh, site. Okay, so the really nice thing about freshly pressed is that it has a RESTful interface. Okay, and this is the post. So it's got freshly pressed has got 10 posts, and the posts, each of those posts is actually inside an array called posts. So what we are going to do is this: we are going to use Ionic to create a mobile application to display this block. Okay, so let's start by creating the Ionic application. So when you install Ionic, it has this it gives you this command line thing called Ionic, and to create an application you go Ionic start, and then you give the name of the directory. So I'm going to call it freshly pressed. Okay, so it's going to go and download and set up the structure of the application directory. So the application directory is actually Cordova. So instead of giving you the Cordova seed application, it's going to set up the seed Ionic application. So once it has downloaded, so freshly pressed. So once it's downloaded, you can see that it has created sort of a Cordova application. So let's just change. So I'm going to change the standard Cordova name to freshly pressed. Okay, and then I'm going to go into this directory. So let's look at this structure of this directory. As you can see, it is downloaded the Ionic directory instead of the standard Cordova directory using okay. So I'm going to clean up the directory a bit. We're going to create everything from the start. So I'm going to remove. So let's look at it. I'm going to remove index. I'm going to remove the JS directory, and also the templates. So we won't be setting out any templates. Okay. So then I'm going to recreate again. Okay, JS. Okay, so we've got that. So now let's look at the directory again. So everything is still there. Okay, so now what we are going to do is this: we are going to start to create the application. So I'm going to open that directory, that www directory, freshly pressed. So I'm going to open that, and let me open this index and JS app. Okay, so let's start index. So I'm going to set up the application. So let's call this freshly pressed. Okay, and then I'm going to set up the Ionic application, Ionic libraries. Okay, link. Give it the Ionic CSS. Okay, script Ionic JS, and select the bundle, so that this bundle includes Ionic and Angular. And then I'm going to set up my app. Link. I'm going to go my CSS style and my app, like that. Okay, so the first thing we want to do now is this. Okay, we want to create a header bar like that. So to create a header bar, okay, we use Ionic's Angular directive. So ion header bar. Okay. Ion header bar, and we can give the color of the bar like using the class. So in this case, we are just going to use bar balance. So you'll get a nice green color. So I'm going to have the title across the bar. I'm call it freshly pressed. And then we're going to set the body, the content. Okay, ion content. Like that. Okay, so h1 content. Okay, so now let's have a look at this particular application and see how it looks like. Okay, whoops. So if you look at here, okay, so if you look at this, you will see that it doesn't look really that nice, and the reason is because this is not an Angular application. So we have used a bunch of Angular directive, but we did not associate this application with an Angular application. So we need to do that. To do that, we go into our JavaScript file, and let's create our application. So I'm going to call it app. Okay, well, Angular module, and give the name of my application. I'm going to call it app, and then declare its dependency on the Ionic package or Ionic module. Okay, our application will most probably need a controller, so I'm going to create a controller now. App controller, and I'm going to inject in the scope and also a log file just in case something goes wrong. And then I'm going to give the function that defines the controller. I'm going to call it the same as the name, call it function controller, like that. So now I define the function. Like that. Okay, so now all we need to do is go back to my HTML file and just associate those things that we have defined in here. So I'm going to use data ng app. So this will be the name of my Angular application, so that will be app. So remember, the name is this, okay, not this. Okay, but so happens that to keep things simple, I've made them the same, but remember, this is the name. So this is what we are specifying. So we need to also add the controller. So I'm going to add the controller in here. Data ng controller app controller here. Okay, so now if we go and refresh this, now we will see that it has got a nice green bar. Okay, so we would probably also want a refresh button here to refresh, to pull in the blocks. So we can add a button here like that. Okay, and instead of having a text, I'm going to put in icon. So what Ionic does is this: it provides you. So let me just move this down here with a nice set of icons. So the icon that we probably want to use is this ion. Look at the name, ion refresh. Okay, so let's do that. Go icon ion refresh, like that, right? Okay, so let's look at that. So that's my ion refresh. Okay, so we may also probably want to associate it with a click. So when we click, it will do something. Okay, so now we use data ng click, and then we say, maybe we say get blocks, or maybe let's call it refresh, like that. Okay, so we go back to our Angular application, create a function, and then just to make sure that everything works, we're going to test it. We're going to just display some text in here, or maybe alert. Like that. Okay, so let's try that. button press. Okay, so now we have associated that button press with this. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is this. We need to figure out how we are going to display the block. Okay, so Ionic has this thing called a card, and the card. So one of the CSS that formats the card looks something like this. So this is called a list card. So it's got a header with an image, a name. You can put some text here, and then the body of icon. So we're going to use this for our block. So to display the block. So let's try it and see how it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to remove that. I'm going to say I think it's div card div card list. Okay, and the title is going to be item avatar. Okay, avatar item. So div item avatar left, and then there's going to be an image. So image. Okay, and there's going to be a little text h2. Okay, name, and then some text. So to create the body, okay, it's going to be item body. So we just the item body. So it's going to be a div item body, like that. Okay, so we may want to have the header here, block title, and maybe some text, right? So let's see how it looks like. So that's the block. So that's our header, and that's the block title. So let's add another one to see how it looks like. Okay, so that's the second one, that's the first one. So let's format this a little bit. So we want to maybe add a shadow to the header bar, give it a little bit of 3D feel, and also maybe to round this off a little bit. So why is this some content up here? So let me just, okay, right? So we want to give this a 3D feel, and we want to round this off a little bit. So let's use our CSS. So to give this a 3D feel, we're going to add a box shadow to this class, bar balance. Okay, dot bar, like that. Box shadow. So let's say 5px gray. Nice. Okay, so like that, right? So let's round this off. So to round this off, that would be this thing that we're looking at. So let's do that. So item avatar left. Okay, so we only want to round the top edge, so it will border top left radius, maybe 10px. So we want to do the same thing with the right border top right radius 10px. Oops. Border top right radius. So let's see. Okay, so maybe we just do that here. Force it. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so we may also want to just put a little bit of shade, maybe like light green or something, to the background. So background green. So E. So maybe we want to change the shade. Okay. Okay. So you get the idea. So you can come and customize to your heart's content. Okay, so let's just leave. So let's just leave that. Okay. So now, so once we have finished creating the UI, the next thing that we want to do is this. We are now going to create a service to pull in this block. Okay, so let's return to our Angular here, and I'm going to now define a service. So to do that, I use service, and let's call this service freshly pressed, and then I'm going to inject in the HTTP and also the log, and also pass in the function for the service. So let's call this freshly pressed, like that. Okay, so I'm going to create a function here, okay, and so let's attach a function to this service. Let's call this get blocks, okay, like that. And then I'm going to use the HTTP JSON P, okay, pass in a callback equals to JSON callback, like that. Okay, so if it's successful, it's going to call our callback function. So let's call this result, like that. Okay, so just for testing, we are going to print it out. Okay, so what I'm going to print is I'm going to print post. So that would be JSON stringify result post. Okay, like that. So now we're going to hook this button. We're going to hook the service to the controller. So to hook this to the controller, we inject it in like so. Freshly pressed here. Okay. When we press the button, we are going to call freshly pressed get blocks. Okay, so let's try this out. Okay, so let's open up the JavaScript console and let's see what happens. Okay, so as you can see, let me make this bigger. The result has come back. Okay, so we are only interested in the post, and so that's the array, and each of the array holds a JSON object. Okay, so now is what we're going to do next is to take this post and render it on the screen. Okay, so we need to link the result here to here. So to do that, we use a model. So when we click on refresh, we're going to pass in our scope. So let me just initialize this first. So we're going to define a model called called post. Let's keep this the same name. Okay, and we pass up here. Okay, so we pass the scope in. So we initialize our post object, post array. We passed it in. So once we get the result, we're going to say, let me define a parameter here. So we're going to say scope post equals to result dot post. Okay. So when the result comes back, we're going to assign it over to post. So now our scope is holding the result. So all we have to do now is to render it to our card. So we're going to use a data ng repeat, and we're going to say p in post. So the post refers to this post, So we're going to display the image. So what image are we going to display? We're going to display this avatar image. So that would be post avatar underscore URL. So data ng source. So that this curly bracket, that's the Angular expression. So we're going to say post author. So P is our control variable, post author that avatar URL. Okay. The name. So that would be which name? We're going to use nice name. So that would be P author nice name, and some text. So some text, we are, let's put the URL for this author's web blog site. So we're going to go A P author URL. Is that it? URL. Yep. And we're going to display it here as well. So it's going to be P author URL like that. Okay. So the type, so the body is quite simple. It will be the title and the content. So it's going to be P title and P content. Okay, so let's try this to see if it works. Okay, so let me just refresh this. Click on this. Keep our fingers crossed, and yes, it has come back. So as you can see, this is the block that has come back. But if you notice that, instead of displaying the HTML, it's displayed as text, right? Okay, so we need to tell Angular that instead of displaying this as the HTML as text, display it as HTML. So what we need to do is this: define a div, use an Angular directive called ng bind HTML like that, and then we give it content. So this is telling Angular, saying that display this as an HTML content. So let's try this again. So now we have the information, the block in HTML. Okay, so what we're going to do is this, because it's displaying some picture, right? So what I want to do is I want to size the image in there so that it fits into the content. So let me go back to CSS. So what we're going to do is this: we want to size everything, all the image inside item body. So that will be item body image, and then I'm going to say maximum width, so 100%, and let's be really insistent, max height 100%. Okay, so let's try this again. Let's see, let's change anything. Okay, so it's nicely fit all the image. Okay, so now that we have got our application done here, so since we are writing a mobile application and not a web application, one thing you notice is this: Ionic provides you with this nice little drag. So what we're going to do is this: we're going to instead of having the button here to refresh, we're going to implement the pull on refresh. Okay, so to do that in Ionic, it's very simple. Just go ion refresher. So this is an Angular directive. On refresh, you just call refresh. So now we can actually remove the button, right? So let's try that again. So we can pull, okay, and it's come back. So if you notice that this thing is still spinning, that's because Ionic doesn't know that the data has come back. So we need to tell Ionic that you can stop this spinning now. So to tell Ionic to stop spinning, all you need to do is send it an event. So use scope $broadcast, and then you say scroll dot refresh complete. Okay, so let's try that again. Yeah. Okay. So what would be really nice as well is we want to have a little some text here to say, you know, pull to refresh. So for the first line, right? So we add a div here. So the div we're going to not very high tech. Maybe we'll put 2br center, maybe an h1 here to say pull to refresh, like that. And what I'm going to do is this: I'm going to use data ng show, okay, to say, okay, if post the length. So if you recall, post is an array. So initially the length will be 0, right? So if the length is 0, then display this. Otherwise, you know, don't display that. Don't display this div. Okay. So let's see how this looks like. So pull to refresh. Yeah. Okay. So now our application is ready. So it looks like a mobile application now. So now we want to package this into into an Android application. Okay, so I'm using Linux, as you probably know. So I'm going to deploy it to Android. So to deploy to Android, what? Okay, so let me show you one other thing. Okay, one thing that's really nice when you're using when you're working with Cordova is that you can actually do simulation. Okay, so there is this thing called Ripple. So you can go Ripple, and what Ripple will do is Ripple will emulate Ionic. Sorry, will emulate Cordova. Okay, so it says it cannot find Cordova. The reason is because we need to add the Android platform first. So let me just do that by doing this. Okay, so we got Ionic platform add Android. Okay, so now we have added Android. So if you actually go into platforms and see if it has Android here. Okay, so all that is set up. So one other thing that you need to set up is the Cordova JavaScript. Just like that. Okay, so what happens is when we build the application, Cordova, the framework will actually copy this into our www directory. So for the time being, this is going to be like a 404. Okay, so let's try this again. Still cannot get. Okay, so maybe I need to build it. So let me just have a look at that again. Okay, so let me just try building it first. Ionic platform build. Sorry, Ionic build Android. Okay, so we are done. So let's try that again. Okay, so okay, so there we go. The application has come. So we pull to refresh. Okay, so now that we have actually tested that, you know, it's sort of working okay, so now it's time to try it on my emulator. So one final step, Ionic run, emulate Android. Okay, so pull to refresh. Okay, so we've got this nice application. So as you can see, my emulator is a little bit slow. Okay, so that's the end of this screencast. So what I'm going to do is this: I'm going to I'm not going to zip the entire directory. I'm just going to zip the www, and you can find the source to www to this www directory below. And I will also copy the APK file and stick it in the www directory, so that now you can install it on your Android phone and try it out. By the way, this is compiled to Android 19. 19 is 4.4, I think Android 4.4. Okay, so thank you very much for staying with me, and sorry for some of the hiccups. Thank you.